What's this? Tabletop Island, huh? Let's see what this is all about.
The Kaijus have risen! Now who will win? Godzilla Tokyo Clash, brought to you by Funko Games and Prospero Hall. Welcome to Tabletop Island. I'm Bernardo, your host, and today we're going to be talking about the board game Godzilla Tokyo Clash by Funko Games and some of my favorite game design peeps over at Prospero Hall. Oh man, I love Godzilla. I enjoyed it so much growing up. I can't say I remember a lot of the characters' names, so don't call me a mega fan. I'm sure a lot of you guys know more about it than I do. But the game is awesome, very thematic, much to be expected by Prospero Hall. But let's first take a look at what you get. So you have first this really amazing design on the cover. Oh man, just look at the painted look of this cover. It just looks absolutely amazing. Godzilla destroying a train, blowing out his beam. Oh, just everything is so great. The back of the box, so well designed, and all of the components are just really nice. Even the box, when it's empty, has really nice color design, and much like you would hope for being a Godzilla fan, the homage to the Japanese text. Oh, everything about the look of it is fantastic. The presentation is great, and Funko Games, I guess, really put in a lot of effort to make this game look good, which I am so happy they did. Now you have this really nice modular board. It has these hexagons, which you can configure based on the number of players that's playing, and it can be different each time, which adds a lot of replayability, not only in the game itself, which we'll get to, but also how the design of the board looks, which is really awesome. The design on the physical hexagons itself are really nice too. It's this really well detailed, painted looking streets, cities, the water. It just really nice detail, and it just fits the theme really well. And then you have these really awesome kind of player boards, which such great design, these tokens which are really thick, and they just look so well. The only thing I could hope for would be maybe some miniatures for some of the vehicles, but I understand they already give you these really nice miniatures over here of the city and all of the bigger components, which look really great too. And that's not to say you can't upgrade your components, which I plan on doing. I saw someone online talking about replacing it with like a Monopoly card and stuff like that, but I kind of want to go a little bit of a step further, so I am going to be getting them made. I'll get to that in another video when I end up actually getting the components, because I think you might enjoy what I do have planned for it. And just so many nice pieces here, especially with the buildings. I'm considering painting them. Then you have these really amazing miniatures. You have Godzilla, my boy Mothra. You have King Ghidorah. I'm sorry if I just completely butchered that. And then you got the homie Megalon, which the miniatures for these guys look absolutely astonishing. The detail is fantastic. Now, the first thing I asked myself, or a lot of you guys might be asking yourselves, is, am I going to paint this game? So this is where I don't think I am. It actually has a toy plastic to it. What that means is it's not a 3D printed hard plastic. It's not like a miniature plastic that you would normally paint. It's almost like those little toy dinosaur action figures you'd get at like a Walmart or just stores in general for like kids' toys. So it's definitely durable in terms of playing with younger children around. I don't think it's a game for too young of an age, but we'll get to the gameplay when I get to that part of this review. But the components just look really great. The detail on them is fantastic, and honestly, I don't know if a miniature would have done it justice without you physically painting in the detail that they did pretty good on these. It already has kind of its own color to it. Obviously, if you're a serious Godzilla fan, the first thing you're going to say is, it's not color accurate, but that's fine. It doesn't have to be, especially if you're just moving it around and destroying stuff constantly. While you could probably paint it, I don't really see myself painting it. I have have this weird worry that when you prime it and you put all this paint on it, because it's so flexible, I feel like it would flake off, and maybe I'm wrong, but it just seems like too much of a headache to even try to go through trying to paint it, especially when it looks fine as is. And you even have Mothra on the stand to make it look like it's flying. I can appreciate the little things with this game. Now, the gameplay itself, you have your own individual deck, which, by the way, the artwork on the cards is also fantastic. It reminds me a lot of Unmatched, but there's a few key differences here. I haven't reviewed Unmatched, you'll be seeing that review soon, but the game it has its own preset deck, and you are kind of destroying the city to get victory points, and to also kind of hurt your opponent to steal victory points from them. And by stealing, I mean just taking cards off of their deck, because the cards itself show the victory points, which is the little crown in the corner. So whenever you deal damage to a monster, you'll take the top cards of their deck depending on the number of damage you've done and choose the highest one from those cards, and you'll add it to your treasure pile or victory point pile, which can just simplify things for you. Don't really know why I didn't use that terminology. I can't remember what they did use, but I don't think I'll be using it. What did they use? Matter of fact, what did they use? Let's see. Damage, blah, blah, blah. Keep a trophy card. Bruh, a trophy card? Come on, man. Victory point. Victory point. Common knowledge. Ooh. But the cards have, again, this amazing artwork. The decks are unique to each character, and you start your turn with 5 cards. There's phases to go through where you can play as many cards depending on the number of energy you're able to spend. The top of the card in the little yellow section actually explains how much energy you're going to use. Then you can move on the board with the little feet symbols. The slash symbols is the attack, and the shield symbols the defense. Easy as can be. I don't know what you would expect for simplicity wise, because they really do the symboling well. Now, the interaction points can get a little complicated. You can pick up vehicles, the throwing action on being able to use your kind of attack strength as the distance for throwing, and just things like that. And then you focus on range, which some attacks have range depending on the hexagons in a straight line, which is also easy to follow. I definitely think the game, in terms of competitiveness, really amplifies with 4 players. I did get a chance to play with 2, and that was a lot of fun. There was a lot more of the board to cover, I'll be completely honest with you, but I did enjoy it. I do think the game extremely excels in 4 players, which is one thing Unmatched does not really excel in, at least for me. I prefer that one-on-one kind of getting inside their head and really focusing on strategy than kind of being cornered by one character. It just, something about it just seems a little off for me in that, and the whole team thing can be fun if you have the right team who really understands the game, but we won't get into reviewing that here. But with this game, the 4-player, oh, it's so chaotic and absolutely fun. You have so many things coming from different corners. Even a 3-player game could definitely amplify things a lot, and you're probably like, doesn't that mean one person's just gonna gang up on the other? Absolutely not. In fact, even if they did, there's going to be a point where they're going to run out and just completely set themselves down and apart from things, because you have to keep moving around to where some of the vehicles are. And if you end up lower on the point tracker, then you actually end up getting advantages of placing things onto the board. So they've really balanced things well in terms of game design. So I don't think them kind of cornering you, putting you in a corner in a 3-player game or even a 4-player game would really have that much effect, because you have to go and get different vehicles, stuff like that, and different people's power levels. You don't really want to go out and try to ambush people, because each character has kind of their own feel to it. Some of them do a lot more retreating, like Mothra, and there's just so many different elements here to consider before you decide to go rampaging on one person and completely get defeated doing so. But the game itself has a lot going for it in terms of strategy and competitiveness. My only big gripe would be the outside, obviously, of the vehicles not having miniatures. So the only other gripe that I would say would be the fact that you have to keep track of a lot of things depending on character and depending on what you draw. There's something called advancement cards, or enhancement cards, that stay in front of you the entire time, and they're things that you keep track of throughout the whole game if they're static effects, and if they're not, you have to remember that they're there. For me, when I was Megalon, on, I had to remember one of the enhancement cards to where every time Godzilla would come into my space, or any of the characters came into my space, they would take 1 damage. So it was little things like that that you had to kind of keep track of, figuring out where you wanted each of the tanks and cars to be, but you also didn't want them close, because if they start a new round adjacent to you, or even move adjacent to you because you're too close to them, you take damage for that, and that really sucks. And then you lose energy, which is super important, because energy is your resource in order to spend to do actions. And sometimes you can run into times where you sit there and don't really do anything, and it kind of took a little bit to realize that the discard ability that everyone has is super important. Discard a card, get to move, and it's also what they call, I forget the term for it, and momentum. So with momentum, that allows you to play another card. So when you have a card that says momentum on it, that means you can play another card, and if that says momentum, you can keep doing it. That sounds broken, but you won't see that happen very often, especially if you have to pay energy for it. You don't really spiral with too many combos, but there's enough for you to really plan ahead and make really smart decision making. So we didn't really understand the discard abilities really till about the middle of the game, which kind of made it so the beginning few turns that we didn't really do anything because we didn't have the energy to do a lot. It really felt like we were just sitting there not doing much. So I can definitely understand where that element can come into play, and then you can discard to throw something, which is super useful, especially when you're trying to throw it at buildings like vehicles in order to get action points, in order in order to get energy, in order to play more cards and attack your opponents, to steal cards from their deck, to get trophy cards, but we're never going to call trophy cards because they're victory points. Yeah, but other than that, that is really my only gripe. I think everything about the game is super awesome. I love that Prospero Hall just keeps hitting the head on the nail with thematic games. I feel like I don't even have to say this anymore because it's just been a home run after home run for every game I've played thus far that they've been attached to in terms of thematic games. I don't think this is for the super young crowd. I know it says 10 plus. I definitely think there's a lot to keep track of, so if you do end up doing that, I definitely recommend paying attention to the rules, because they really break down what characters you should start with if it's your first game, and characters like Godzilla don't have as much to keep track of, which can be really helpful for new players, especially if they're younger. I do think once you get the flow of it, or after even one game, you'll really understand how to play, and the more you start to get it to the table, you'll realize the full capability of the characters, and then you can advance on to more advanced characters like Mothra and stuff like that. How they interact is super important, and they all, again, have their own feel to it. The instructions are extremely well written, which really nicely designed, really well placed in order. Yeah, anybody can really understand these instructions, even Volcar.
Hi, and welcome to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith, and in this video, we're going to learn the 2 to 4 player game, Godzilla Tokyo Clash.
No, but really, I promise you the instructions are easy to follow. I'm just lazy. But that's honestly all I have for you guys today. If you are interested in notifications, there is a bell up there somewhere. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I do appreciate any feedback. I'm trying to make these videos more and more outrageous, and with your guys' help, I have been doing so. Monday, regular board game reviews. Wednesday, weekly updates / talks. And on Fridays, my vintage board game reviews. And that is all I have for you guys today. I will see you guys next time.